Summer, this occurred to me. On Scotland's eastern coast, in a little fishing town, I reside. Before this happened, I was 15, but now I'm 16. A great deal of Celtic mythology in Scotland centers on rivers, lakes, and the ever-present law. Sirens, banshees, or banseed in Gaelic are all part of these folklore situations. Along with that, there's the Blue Minute Mitch, which lurks in the seas between Orkney and the mainland, waiting for unsuspecting sailors to perish. Additional supernatural horses include kelpies, which inhabit water and have served as inspiration for numerous films, including Pacific Rim. According to legend, this man comes ashore dressed as a swordfish and sets out to slaughter unsuspecting fish. That being said, the Kalikushi legend is, in my opinion, the most horrifying of all. The original purpose of this monster tale was to scare children away from harbors and the ocean in the hopes that they would not drown. When I was a kid, my parents told me the story. Kalikushi, meaning harbor of the abyss in the original language, is a mythical creature that masquerades as both a man and a fish, and it is said to lurk in shallow waters, waiting for unsuspecting children to come too close. Little ones who dismiss it as insignificant, like a piece of stump or wildflower. An approaching Kalikushi will seize the child and haul them out to sea as soon as they get too close. A feast of the child's flesh awaits once they're far from land. Many kids my age, including myself, found this story terrifying, but now we all just laugh it off. Our younger siblings are the ones we scare now that it no longer frightens us. For the most part, this was the case up until about a year ago. A tight-knit group of friends from my high school lived just down the street from me, even though my town was quite tiny. As a group, we had always gotten along well, having spent our formative years together. During the summer, when school was out and those tedious exams were behind us, my friends and I would go boots on the tune, which essentially means to go drinking in the evening. We were a small group consisting of Morgan and Owenna, 2 girls, and my best friend Jamie. Even though it was cringeworthy and awkward and testosterone, I tried to impress Morgan all the time because Maya really liked her, despite the fact that it was getting late in the day. The weather was scorching. As the tide was falling, a thin layer of high R fog was settling over the harbor. As Jamie and I sneaked in a few cans of cider, we stopped by the corner store to pick up some chips. It was decided Jamie and I were going to get down to brass tacks tonight. At the docks, we met the girls, and then we walked down to the beach. A narrow red brick road led to the main harbor, where the majority of the fishing boats were housed. Due to the layout of the harbor, a decommissioned lighthouse was reached after you veered to the left and crossed a stone bridge. Continue past the lighthouse and you'll see a tiny, unstable wooden dock that hadn't seen any traffic since the 1880s. You can probably guess that it was in a terrible condition of disrepair and off-limits to the general public. While munching on our chips, we made our way to the lighthouse and sat on the rocks below. All the while we were joking and laughing. There was also a good amount of touchy-feely and flirting, as is typical among children. A putrid odor of dead, rotting fish sunk into the air, just as things were heating up. Even though we had detected its scent on previous occasions, it was much more pervasive and frightening this time, and it showed no signs of abating or even getting worse, given that the boats typically depart at sunrise on Monday and return at midnight on Thursday. The peculiar aroma of dead fish wafting through the air at this hour of the evening was unexpected. It was only Tuesday. The boats hadn't returned yet, and we still hadn't pinpointed the source of the odor. The girl who was clinging to Jamie's arm, Una, expressed her sudden nausea and desire to return home, as she was distressed by the entire ordeal. When asked if she needed company, Jamie expressed her desire to go as well. Morgan and I were left in an uncomfortable quiet as the two of them departed. Their departure allowed us to spend more quality time together, she continued, so she was glad they had gone. While we savored our last drops of cider, we made our way to the lighthouse and gazed out at the waning light. A sudden splash of water grabbed my attention as we were casually discussing rather personal topics. Because Morgan also heard it, I knew I wasn't hallucinating. Our investigation led us to the pier, but alas, there was no sign of the sound. As soon as we heard what sounded like water, we jogged down to see if anyone was trapped. Actually, I was secretly hoping it was someone in desperate need of assistance so I could brag to Morgan about my heroic deeds. Trust me, it sounds terrible. However, that was incorrect. The fog had grown thicker, and your visibility had shrunk to within 5 meters. The continuing splashing prevented us from leaving. As I made my way to the pier, the pungent odor of stinky fish assaulted me. The stench was unbearable. It had intensified tenfold from before. The sight of the pier brought my heart crashing down. My height is around 6 feet and 3 inches, which is considered tall for this area, but this creature must have been 8 feet tall. It stood at the very end of the pier, with salt water dripping off its many limbs. Covered in sea bladders, its skin was scaly and brown. What should have been its mouth was instead a gaping, cracked hole, and its eyes were lifeless and sunken. Details of the creature's head, arms, and shoulders were all I could discern due to the dense fog that engulfed it. Between hisses, it emitted a horrifying clicking sound. On its face, if that's the right word, steam started to rise. Since Morgan had also heard it, she seemed visibly distressed, so I bolted from the pier. With our breaths labored and our skin covered in goose flesh, I grabbed her arm and we dashed towards the town center. No one ever found out what we saw because we kept it between us. It was definitely the Kali Quiche, and not Cushy, that I beheld that night. Since my friend Jamie relocated, Morgan and I have essentially stopped seeing each other. Our mind will never stop racing over what happened.